All right, so today we'll be going over chapter 3, the beginning. And how about Dad, why don't you start giving just a overview of where you're at?
I just quickly read through the whole chapter, and one of the things I noticed is each time I read the Gita, I sort of have to revise the other chapters because your perspective improves a little bit, at least for me, and I get some more subtle meaning out of the earlier chapter, I guess. But as I was suggesting to everybody earlier, maybe there are some key points that come up in this chapter that you think are really relevant. So we may want to just go over and either Shiv or Lata can moderate and decide to give different turns to different people. Maybe Lata, you do it.
Sure.
Okay. Jiten, why don't you bring out the important, at least one point, and then the next person to talk will be Ravi Kumari.
Okay. So as I was saying that this is a very important chapter because it talks about Karam Yoga. For everything you got to do Karam Yoga, जो है अपने कर्म जो है करने पड़ेंगे जो है. तो इसी में बिगिनिंग क्या होता है कि भाई जो अर्जुन है उसको भगवान ने चैप्टर 2 में ज्ञान योग कर्म योग सबके बारे में बताया. ये भी बताया कि ज्ञान योग बेटर है जो है. तो द चैप्टर स्टार्ट्स विद ए क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम अर्जुन कि यदि ज्ञान योग बेटर है जो है तो why do you want to push me towards this fight जो है कर्म करने के लिए आप क्यों मुझको पुश कर रहे हैं. तो देन भगवान कृष्ण जो है says कि भाई for everything you got to do karma yoga, you cannot be static for one moment, you got to do some karmas. So main thing is how those karmas don't become a reaction to you. They don't those karmas you have to do in such a way that they will benefit you. चित शुद्धि होगी जो है तो उसके लिए जो है ये हिंदी में ठीक है ये जो है.
हाँ ठीक है.
If you talk in English, then some of the other people will
किसी को
understand.
हिंदी नहीं आती है? I mean, maybe there are someone who doesn't.
Not just here. Even otherwise, there are people who haven't come, but they listen to the YouTube.
That's true.
We have to speak in English if possible. Yeah.
Okay. So what you have to do is that you have to make sure that you don't look at the karam phal jo hai. You are not attached to the phal. You do things externally, all the things, what your duties are, responsibilities are that God has given. And based on that, you don't take it internally, especially the phal, the fruits of the labor that you are doing. You are doing it for the nature or society. So this is one point that is very important, and everybody has to do the karmas. So I will stop here. There are another couple of points as we go.
Ravi, I want you to pick up from there. Just 2 minutes.
Okay. So this is something that I have been dwelling upon. And I was watching some other videos that it's like a rabbit hole. Once you start along this path, there is no easy answer to these things. So like doing action, karma itself actually leads you to commit sin. Like if you are born as a king, the king himself, by doing some of his things, it is the duty of Kshatriya to protect his people, whoever is under him, and he has to do his duty. in doing the duty, he is committing some sins also. Like he has to kill people. That is required for a kshatriya. So there is a broader theme of this cyclical thing that we have. We are coming back again and again and again because of our own actions. But if you don't do any action, that is also sinful. That is like living a life of sloth. But if you do the action also, like realizing that this is a very complex thing. I don't even pretend to understand everything, or these are things very confusing. And the more you read about them, the more there are more questions generated than you find answers. That is how I feel about these things, especially karma, sin, and how I mean when we talk about Bhagavad Gita and the concepts in it, especially when you have a Western audience, or when you are trying to touch upon the Western part of it, we try to avoid the reincarnation and the other parts of it that seem like overly complex concepts. But I think those also have to go with the discussion of this. So everything that we are doing is being counted somewhere. Someone is in our culture, it says it's Chitragupta is counting. And in most of the movies, Chitragupta is like a comedian that goes to Yamraj and actually mentions these things. But nowadays they are saying like it's not like a person that is doing that. This is this infinite consciousness that is there all around us. And even when you pray to an idol, it is that consciousness you are asking, you are invoking them to come into that idol and do that for you, because it's very hard for your mind to feel that there is infinite consciousness around us and you don't look at anything. So you are asking that consciousness to come into that murti and show themselves as that pleasant person or things like that. That is what I want to add. I mean, I know it's not exactly about the chapter 3 on that, but it's like I said, these are all interrelated, and everything leads to another rabbit hole. That's like a huge question. That's what I feel.
Thank
I
you.
think-
Sumita Balaji, she's coming here for the first time. Do you want to say a few words?
Actually, I think Surinder wants to say something.
Oh, sorry, Surinder?
No.
Can't hear you. You are muted.
Okay,
Okay.
it's better now?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. No, I am just trying to add a little bit that when we are talking about karma, and Krishna very well says that each one he has to perform because nothing is inactive, everything is active. Our whole sansar is active, so that way. But everyone is acting according to the gunas, 3 gunas, which are within the Prakriti also and the Purusha also, because these are combined 3 gunas. And we are acting according to our gunas, like some that who are inactive, the Sattvic guna is probably prominent. So we have to, you can say, if intellectual guna is there, then we are by our brain, our thinking, our rationality. And that's another one is our, you can say, karma, that if we have to act according to our, let us say, Rasi guna. And this is what I think Arjuna is trying to tell. Krishna is trying to tell to Arjuna that you're not performing your Rajasic dharma, and you have to act as a Kshatriya, and you have to fight. And I think these kind of tendencies which we have sometimes overcome the other. Sometimes we say, okay, our child has to become a doctor, whereas the tendency is not to be a doctor. So there are certain combinations that which we should follow in our life. So you cannot say that you are exclusively on one guna and then you do. And that's what Krishna is saying, that intelligence is important to perform an action. An action without intelligence is less meaningful. But at the same time, you should not be indolent. You should not be inactive, that, oh, but lazy and So you have to combine all the three so that there is an action going on with a kind of dharma. And I remember, it's very funny to say that when Vajpayee was the prime minister and Narendra Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat, and the Gujarat riots had taken place, and they met in Delhi in a meeting or somewhere, and Narendra Modi wanted the blessings of Vajpayee and said that, okay. And Vajpayee said in one sentence that you have to do your Raj Dharma. That's it. And that was a good indication that you are not doing indirectly your Raj Dharma, and you have to be Raj Dharmic. And I think that applies to the situations currently going on in India as well, that the leaders are not performing their Raj Dharma. And as a result, there's a chaos, conflict, misunderstandings, violence, etc., etc. So I think if we bring in our activities all the three gunas, in my perspective, that's the best way to act. We don't go entirely by intelligence or entirely by indolence or purely by, you can say, action, that which may be not a selfless action. So some people like our economists and social thinkers in Western world say about the fatalism in India, why we are not so productive when we compare the Western world. Not a kind of, in their view, a karam yogis. They're not action oriented. If something is not able to happen, we don't act and we say, okay, it's a fate, what I can do. So I think many of us earlier, now I think the things are slightly changing, that the fatalistic attitude was because the sattvic component was so dominant on our personalities that we did not acted according to our talent or other things, or maybe the opportunity didn't exist. So that is how we cultivate those kind of things, that we are more productive, we are more rational, we are more ethical in our actions, we are more moral in our actions. And this is a kind of message which I'm trying to say based on the gunas that our actions should be based on. Thank you.
Thank you. Divya? Divya, I think as a medical doctor and also an engineer, you'll have plenty of things to say in terms of what happens when you're treating, or even Malika or Shiv, that if there's a patient and you're treating the patient, something happens to the patient, are you going to keep brooding on that? No, you did your job, right? Okay, now Divya, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay. So I hadn't thought of it so much in context of medicine quite yet, but in terms of like how we live our own lives and what Arjuna is going through in his story, I think that what they're trying to tell, what the author is trying to tell him is that we have our own self-control over ourselves, and how we control our own actions is counted in karma. And by having that self-awareness of how we are avoiding temptations around us, and if there's something material in the world, to avoid wanting that material thing, to be able to control those senses, that is how we're able to build our karma. If there's something tempting for him in his fight, to fight back, but it might not be the right thing to do, then inaction is okay in that time. The action is taking inaction. So inaction doesn't necessarily mean you didn't do anything that you didn't kill your brother. So that's that doesn't necessarily mean that, what am I saying? That you did the wrong thing. That is an action. By abstaining from action is also an action. So that's okay to have that karma. And moving towards that mentality in order to understand your right from your wrong, and to understand like where the pressure is in his situation, to move him towards a certain direction. the more he had control over that, the higher his karma will be and the closer he will be to Krishna. That's
Okay,
what I understood from the third chapter.
Malika, you want to say a few words if you want to?
Sure. So my thoughts first about the question about relating it to being a physician, which I think whenever you're patient, if something doesn't happen that you would want to happen, I think it's very hard to get over that kind of thing, a negative thing happening to your patient. So even if you tried your best, you try to do everything right, things can still go wrong. So certainly if outcomes don't go as desired, then of course it's nice to try to focus on the fact that you did, what you could, type of thing. But I think more generally, this chapter for me, the way I interpret it is about kind of how do we get the most out of ourselves in a positive way in this life, and that may differ depending on how, what we're born into, our karma, right? What we're born into, what it means to be productive and what it means to, do work is different depending on what that is. But getting the most out of ourselves, I think it does make a lot of sense to focus on the work itself rather than the outcome. And if you start enjoying the work itself, then you end up being really productive, regardless of external validation or lack thereof, or whatever the external response is, because you're so sort of immersed in the work itself and the productivity. So if I translate that to my own life, I think definitely that is very motivating, to think about just doing a good job, at whatever it is I'm trying to do. And, overall, I think, at the end of all of that, whatever that specific task may be, I can, take comfort in knowing that sort of I'm focused on the right part of that. So I think it's a great chapter.
Pravin?
Well, just a couple of things I wanted to comment on. One thing was the first chapter introduced us to the concept of dharma. And I think dharma, in my opinion, is more like your duty in society. Okay, so you have a role to play in society based on where you were born, how you were trained, and particular opportunities that are open to you right now. And so that gives you a role in society. The second thing is the karma. That part, when we watched Mukundananda, that was very interesting because he gave the example of nurses and doctors and people like policemen or firemen, and they just go and do their duty and they can't worry about whether they're successful or not. For a doctor, it is trying to do the best for that particular patient, or nurse also, same thing. And you can generalize it to almost any job, is basically you can't spend a whole lot of time worrying about the consequences of what you're going to do, but you just have to do what you're supposed to do within this bigger organization or system. And so in that sense, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if you think about any army or whatever, every person in that army has to play their role. Otherwise, that army is not going to be successful in whatever it's trying to do. And I'm saying that in the context of the Gita, where they were fighting a war. And going back to what Surinder said about what is happening in India right now, I think a lot of people are not clear on what is their role in society, right? And there are people who are higher up who may be taking advantage of their position, or people who are lower trying to figure out how to get ahead, those kinds of things. So people are not clear that look, if I do my duty, that's the best for society. No, it's not like that, right? In many things, at least in the past in India, I don't know how it is now, but so the one thing that in this chapter that really strikes me is that sloka where it says that we are born into a sequence of action reactions, right? So when you think that you have complete independence in pursuing your karma, that's, or even your dharma, it's not really true. Just think about it. You are not, if you are a soul that's born into the world, you probably didn't have much control over what situation you were born into, what family, which nation, all those kinds of things. And also all the events around you, if this country is involved in a war, or it's a rich country, or it's a poor country, those are all things that are completely, they're just action, reaction, action, reaction. There's a stream of action reactions, and we're born into that. And we're sort of flowing in that, and within that, you try to do your duty. So kind of a weird commentary, but anyway, so that's what I was thinking.
Okay, Gita?
Yeah, in this chapter, there are two kind of people who do two kinds of karmas. One set of people who go to the mountains, right? And they do sadhana, but they still have to do work. They still have to do karmas. And when they do that, it's like they have to do it for others. And when you do it for others, you don't incur chain of reaction, action and reaction, right? It's a good karma because you give it to others. Your thought process is like, you're not doing it for myself. And the other one is like we are in this world where we have to do karmas. We are born in this society to do karmas, like Arjun, and we all are doing good, right? So how can we do karma without any reaction, action and reaction? So in one of the this thing is said that when you do action, you do it for the goodness of others, not for yourself all the time. So when you do that, it is very important that, like Janak, right? Janak, he was the king of, in Ramayana, he was the king. And he became a source of this thing, like a guru. So when he did that, he did it for others. And he became like a guru for everybody to follow him. Same thing Krishna is saying over here, that if I have to also, when I've taken birth in this life, I've came down on earth, I have to perform. And in order to perform, I have to do my duties. If I don't do my duties, this world will come to an end. So I'm not without any action, without any karma. So when we do that, it is for others that we do. So most of the time he's saying, when you do that and you do not incur action, you are cut off with action and reaction. You do not get what you call any karmas on you. You do not, you're cut off with life cycle of doing and not doing, action and reaction. You are slowly cut off by that kind of thinking. You do not think for yourself, you do it for others. That is why Krishna also is saying later on that do it, surrender to me, and all the action will be, you will not incur any pap.
Pravin, did you have to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that, because I think that thinking that you have to do for others before you do for yourself creates a lot of conflict in a person, right?
Yes.
Because you keep thinking, wow, I'm doing this. Should I be doing this? It's just for myself. Is that wrong? Is that right? And there's a little difference between the American approach, which has gone a little too far in the other direction, which is that it's okay for you to do good for yourself, to make money for yourself. That's just fine. That is not a crime,
I agree.
And when everybody is doing that, as long as you're not doing things that are unscrupulous, right? As long as you are doing things within your particular role, as long as you're maximizing your own earnings, that's okay. And when once it's like that, that's why America works so well. That's why a capitalist society works so well, because there is not that confusion. I mean, once, and goes back to my previous comment in one of the previous meetings that we had, where I said that the first duty you have is to yourself and to the immediate dependents that are on you. You have to make sure that you are strong financially, healthy, in your own health, and you're just strong in every way. And then once you've taken care of your basic needs, then you can start worrying about a bigger circle, maybe your bigger family, or whoever you consider to be your closest friends or group or whatever, and then to the nation, your duty to the complete country. So it goes step by step, but you have to make sure that you are strong, both financially and physically and in every way. And then you can start worrying about other people. And I think there cannot be confusion on that. You cannot be thinking that, oh, I have to work for other people, because that will create a lot of conflict in your mind, because you may be thinking that, oh, I'm doing the wrong thing if I'm just doing it for myself. But at a lower level, that's all you have to do.
Pravin?
Let me make a comment on that.
Mallika has a comment, please, first.
Okay.
Yes, Mallika.
Oh, it wasn't very important, but I think
No, I
by
think it's
saying-
important.
I mean, I think what your comment about sort of the money as the outcome that you can say capitalist societies are focused on, like America, it changes the way that the society works, obviously. And so it's something that by saying that it's working well, there's an assumption there where it's placing certain things as more important than other things that function differently in other countries. And
well, the key point I was making was that you shouldn't feel guilty about making a living for yourself, right? I mean, and you're obviously working for yourself. You're not working for someone else. You're working for yourself and for your immediate dependents. You should not feel guilty about that. You should do a good job and you should make money. And if you get to be really powerful, then you can start thinking about donating and doing things for society and stuff like that. At that point, fine. Oh, I think Ravi and Jiten both have.
Yeah,
is
let me make a
smiling away.
comment on this. Let me make a comment. See, most of the time, your goals are in parallel with the society goals. So whatever you are doing for yourself is also benefiting the society.
Yes.
So there is no conflict there, most of the time. But
Yes.
if a case comes in where your actions are going to benefit you and at the same time hurting the society, then you have to think about that.
Yes.
So that's what Gita is saying, that you cannot have a different goal from the society, because the whole society is benefiting from you, and you are benefiting from society. So therefore, make sure that all the work that you do is in parallel with the society.
That's good. That's a good thing. Ravi?
Okay.
You wanted to...
So I want to start off with what Surinderji was talking. So there is an extreme for everything. So we Indians, at least the previous generation of us, we have been literally brainwashed for so long for that a lot of us started believing that we are inferior in many ways because we could not fight like warriors, and that is why we were taken advantage of, and that is why people came over and ruled over us. And because of that, we have this nihilistic attitude also, that everything is karma, and everything happens for a reason. And that you still kind of see that in some aspects of Indian culture. Like, people don't want to do anything and say that like whatever is given is God given, and I don't want to do anything about it. God will take care of it. And that is a nihilistic mentality that comes out of it is not coming from a vacuum. I mean, we interacted with so many other cultures. They came over, they took over. We fought among ourselves, and there are so many other things, and it is generally attributed to Kali Yuga and all the ills of it. But yeah, if you totally like, you are letting even the basic control out of your own self. So whatever is happening to you, you don't want to do anything, and you want to blame it on the higher power and say that I am not responsible for it. Someone is doing this to me. So we are even going against Gita, and that we are not even.
Kalyug ek ke liye thodi na hai. Kalyug is not for one nation; it's for everyone.
Everyone, yeah. I mean,
it's also in this country.
Yeah,
and
it is in this country.
Like
Let
Russia,
him finish. Let him
China,
finish.
everywhere.
Gita?
Kalyug is everywhere.
Let Ravi finish whatever he said.
Okay.
So it is that effect in everywhere. I agree that, but our nihilistic attitude came from that. We take this karma to an extreme level and say that we don't have to do anything. God will take care of anything. Not all of us, but some of us do that. That is one part. The next part about America. It is very good. America is very successful there because there are some advantages that happen. We got to remember the bad things also that happened, especially African American slavery and all that plantation. And we always look at the American success as something, it is just coming out of duty. There were some really bad things, like once you have a certain advantage, where you start in life has an effect on where you are going in your life also. So for the past 100 to 200 years, the banking system and the whole financing was literally rigged in favor of the colonial mindset and people that were taking advantage of other people. Literally, other countries' natural resources, other countries' manpower as slavery was used by most of the European powers. They just had a leg up in building the international banking system and financial system. And that is still working. Look at what they are doing to another country now. I mean, Russia is not like a innocent person or anything, but such a large, powerful country can be brought under control if you can put those sanctions. And look at what happened to Venezuela. So literally that country was nearly bankrupt because they were dependent only on oil. And there is a lot of this geopolitics that goes on. So the mindset there is, it's not biblical, it's not Bhagavad Gita or anything. If you have the advantage, you need to take advantage of it, and you don't need to pay attention to destroying nature or culture or indigenous people. Abuse and use the system in any which way you want. So there is another, that is the bad aspect of it. And that's a conflict that is going on even in this country about the environment, how we are using this capitalist to an extreme extent, and are we going to even survive another few generations if we go the way that we are? So there is no perfect system. There are abuses that have happened, and there are some advantages that people have. And this is mentioned in India as well. The caste system and the upper caste always had an advantage, and they are still the ruling class over there in India. And there is a lot of corruption built into it, and you take that as, okay, I am born into this, and so I'm going to abuse the system below. So everyone is doing their duty, but but some of them are not doing their duty well. They are not taking care of the society that they are part of. They are not taking care of the people that are under them in a realistic way. There is a lot of abuse in the system, and it's not just a white man thing or a black man thing or a brown man thing. Everybody is at it in their own way.
Shiv, do you have anything to say? I just see you only smiling.
Well, yeah, I agree with what was just said in terms of the idea that karma is something that is context dependent, right? So it depends on your experience and where you have chosen to be born into, yes? So if you're in the circumstances that allows for you to create a shift that other people may not be able to create in a system that you can see as abusive, is it not your responsibility to change the culture? Is it not your responsibility to go against the society?
How?
To change it to be something that is less abusive?
How would you change? How
By
do we
creating
change?
a new way and
Like what?
representing something different than what is abusive, yes? For example, even just the way that we're creating food. If you can see that the way they're creating food is destroying the soil, is it not your responsibility to support ways of creating food that are not destroying the soil? Even that, if that means, let's say, you know, going out of your way to support new systems that most people are not supporting, or maybe not even be able to support, by creating new ways of creating food. This is just an example. If you're seeing that the medical system is not giving people ways of actually fixing their health, is it not your responsibility to support new ways of, let's say, building an immune system or creating food that supports one's health? And you know, there are like so many examples in terms of the monetary system, in terms of many different systems that one can see right now may have sort of an underlying context of abusing rather than supporting all beings. Is it not our responsibility to step back from that sequence of just supporting what happens to be where you were born into in terms of action reaction and actually change the karma?
There is, for example, you brought up the medical system. You know, I just retired, I'm a doctor, but when I was working for the hospitals, actually I had my own practice, but there are so many people from the top, even though you have your own practice, they control the doctor. Which medication can you write? Oh, the LDL is this high, so you are supposed to take Crestor. Why? Do they tell you what are the side effects that particular medication has? Has anybody told you what nutrition you should eat so you don't have to take any pills? No, you just have to follow the numbers and treat the numbers. And if the numbers are not up to par, you get a notice from the hospital.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying in terms of if you're just following the rules that are put upon you by a system that is not in your control, you can either step back and say you don't have any control and just go forward with, okay, this is just how I have to make money and survive.
Yeah, that's what I don't know what other doctors do.
If you have the ability, you can step back and say, okay, I'm going to accept less money and support something that my soul is calling for. Yeah.
Shiv, it's not a question of accept less money. What happens is you lose your privileges at the hospital. And
yes, that's what I'm saying. You would lose your privilege as a medical doctor, and you would step into something new. Yes.
Like what? You've done that for the last 40 years. And you change your profession to what?
To something new. There are, for example, many doctors right now who are representing something new, and they're risking their medical licenses in order to represent a
Yes,
new way
yes,
of even
they are.
practicing medicine,
Yes. I
right?
know
And
that-
the reason that they are being supported by many people is because they see that they're actually creating a new way that is less abusive. And even though they're risking their medical license, karma is on their side.
So that's what you answered the question yourself. So this system, the system that is in America, which is a capitalist system based on freedom of speech and presuming that the freedom of speech and communication remains, right? And so if you can hear new ways of doing things through YouTube, and that gets spread into the community, and then there's a demand for different kinds of medical services, then you will have entrepreneurship providing those different kinds of medical services, and the system will change. So if you have confidence that yes, that system is going to change, and it's of course going to take time, but it is going to change through the existing structures that are in this capitalist American system, which personally I still have faith in.
See,
I
not
can see how.
necessarily even through the existing structures. A lot of doctors are stepping back from the insurance model and just going
Yes.
for
No,
actually.
but that's what I'm talking about.
That's
So,
a
so
better
it's
one.
it's evolving a new kind of system that's
Exactly.
going to provide medical services in a
Competitive
different,
systems, alternative systems. Yeah.
in a different kind of way, maybe where we won't be so dependent on medical insurance or whatever,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and see, the reason that people might be willing to pay for something that insurance is not covering is because maybe it works,
yes,
right?
we may have gone a little far from Gita. I don't
A
know.
little bit
how
far,
about-
but look, what I'm saying partially in terms of understanding that the karma is context dependent, right? Is the understanding that, I think we get lost sometimes in just unconsciously doing what we're told.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to, ignore our karma, ignore our context, and just try to say, okay, this is objectively good and this is objectively bad, whereas there is no such thing. And that's the purpose of the karma, is understanding that the good and bad is a subjective thing.
I think it goes back to what Jiten was saying, really. If people think that they are doing something that's wrong for society, right? They should change what they're doing. That's what Jiten, I think, was saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, Jiten? Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think
Surinder wants to
Surinder
say
wants to,
something.
yeah.
But
You know,
you
main
have to be
thing you
able to
got to
step
see
back
is,
from that unconscious mode of just following along with the action reaction. You have to be able to step back and detach from that in order to be able to see if what you're doing is good or bad for the society as a whole.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what it
Surrender.
says.
So that's what you have to see. You have to analyze and see what is the impact on society and whether you want to be part of that or not.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's where the karma comes.
I think
Mallika
Sur-
wants to say
This kind
something.
of sadhana, this kind of sadhana, it takes a long time, life after life after life. It doesn't come all over again, all so fast. So you
Yeah.
have to keep on practicing and practicing with the true mind, with dedication, with all those things that is given over here, with everything, with you follow slowly and slowly, you will turn inward and see what is right and not right. This is what he's saying, Krishna is saying, that once you start turning inwards, turning to your soul, that's when you start doing goodness for others, right? Irrespective of money or not money. When you do that, you start progressing, you're coming out of life and cycle, out of cycle of action and reaction. Karma, you don't collect karmas. You start, since you're doing it for others, as it said in here, then you do not get into the cycle of life and birth. And it
Yes.
takes a long time, life, birth after birth after birth.
Mallika has to say something. She's trying
I
to.
think Surinder also wanted.
Oh,
to say
sorry. Surinder, you said, and then Mallika can talk next.
Oh, look who's there with Mallika. Surinder, did you want to say something? You have to unmute yourself. Surinder, you have to
Surinder, you're
unmute yourself.
muted. Yeah.
Am I audible now? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we look at the entire debate, and we can give example and after example of everyone's life and nations and societies. But what I feel that when I look at holistically, that we are acting at three planes. One is the mundane plane, that our daily survival questions in which we are led by a capitalistic society, is a socialistic society, or some other mode of production. And based upon that, our larger actions are guided. This may not be purely ethical, but just a particular mode of production by which we are led to, or a cultural system or a social system, and by which we perform certain karmas. And we don't qualify them, good or bad. And like in capitalism in the US, well, profit is a motive, and it doesn't matter. We can exploit the resources of the entire world. We don't care whether people are living in poverty or waging a war, that we have money, we have capital, we have labor, we have technology. We can destroy anyone, the planet itself. So it means the profit is a motive. The company is a motive. So that is I can't call it at different levels, individuals, societies, countries. So this is a mundane level at which we work and function, and largely try to see that how we can balance it. Second, we work at the ethical plane level, that in which the morals and ethics, value systems come into play. And this is like a kind of balancing act that we can bring the mundane plane into kind of balance with equanimity, that profit and loss are same thing, that we don't have to only go for the profit, and so on. So that is the second level that which is required actually now, that because the mundane level is too much with us and the ethical level is low. And again, you can look at different planes, whether it's a nation or it's an individual or it's a community or society, that we have to train ourselves into that mode. And third, I think what Krishna and the whole aspect of Gita is a metaphysical, which we are not talked much. And metaphysical is knowing yourself, peace of mind, etc. That once we are knowing ourselves, then we can know the society, then we can know the universe. So unless we know ourselves through our right karmas, through our right gunas, that we cannot perform very ethically, we cannot perform very, you can say, in a mundane plane. We largely live in the mundane plane. So that's where I think the society has to intervene, that how we cultivate through yoga. I mean, there are practices that by which we can know ourselves and perform a better action. And that is the whole science of yoga and mindfulness, which is very recently, and other philosophies like we can say Krishnamurti is talking about that we have to uncondition our mind in order to understand. But we are so much conditioned that our actions are actually as a result of those conditioning. Likewise, if we go into living in the present, Mark Tully, he's a great philosopher of the contemporary society, and he's talking about let's living in present, not in the past and not in the future. That's the right kind of action, which is that any action which we are doing, we're doing it for the present. Let us say if you are in the bathroom and we are washing our teeth, so rather than thinking in the thought pattern that what is going to happen in my office and while I'll be driving, rather you concentrate on your brushing the teeth. Likewise, when you're taking shower, for example. So how we just concentrate our mind, not by force, by certain actions, small actions, and that way we train ourselves to look into ourselves. That's I think is an equally important, which probably I found that was lacking in our discussion. Thank you.
Shobha says, as time is running out, I understand we should do our duties properly and not to worry about what others are saying. And the other thing she also says is was confused about this point to do yoga. What is it? Yoga prayers to keep God happy. But in my view, if we are honest and not harming anyone, that is good karma. Shobha, if you want to show your face and we can listen to you. That's what Shobha is saying.
She would rather stay here.
Shobha is my friend from Boston. And we used to have our satsangs and singing in a house. And now she's moved to Virginia, which is great. She lives in Bethesda, Maryland. I'm so happy they're here. Ravi wanted to say something.
I was typing away in response to people that were typing
Oh,
while
okay.
listening. So, yeah, she was saying like, I mean, we can't control what other people will say or do. There is no easy answer to that. At least there is a consciousness in us that we are responsible to, and at the end of the day, we should speak to that first. There is a saying in Hinduism, right? The God is in you itself.
Yeah.
I think about that. So, like how it makes any sense. But if you look at it in a Christian Bible, it's Adam and Eve that were the first people. In our culture, it's Brahma created, and then you have Manus, and then all these people. So if they had children, and they had children, and they had children, that is how they are part of us. I mean, if you go trace back maybe 100 generations or 1,000 generations, there is some amount of DNA that is from that first or second person that's there. So if, that is how I look at it. And you are responsible to that. You pray to your ancestors, you have this Pinda Pradhan and all these things. So your consciousness is what matters most than appeasing anyone or anything else. So if something makes sense, and that is where it could go wild also. People that exploit other people and do all these things, they justify that they are born with superior intellect, and because of that they have the right to abuse. And that is exactly what we are doing wherever we can. As a country, America does what is best for America, and it's always about profit, and that doesn't necessarily make things any better over time. And even in India, that is the issue. That is what we are trying to do. Our politicians, our business people, the ethics are being set aside, and we are forgetting about the karma part. And if everything is just profit motive, then the society will have to face it at someday. It's not going to work, especially with the way things are going. It is good. Yes, everyone should use their intellectual capacity to make money, and that is all that's important too. But you have to look at how many people you are hurting in the process, whether you are being gentle about it, and whether you are being rightful about it. So it's, that is something that we need to look forward to.
I think right now this profit motive is clearly what has been driving the culture. And because of that, karmically speaking, I think that what we're going to be facing as a result of this is just more pain and suffering as a collective until we learn how to shift that. And that's the karma.
Yes, that's the.
So shift. Everybody has to, people do have to make some money for their living, which is important.
Well, look, if you look at what's happening, even in terms of the monetary system, in terms of how we're shifting the burden of the debt onto everyone, this is just increasing the pain and suffering on everyone, even financially speaking. So even financially speaking, it's not working. Even though there are some that are benefiting, every single person is getting hurt by this. Profit.
Has anybody here read this book, The Fourth Turning? Are people familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah, so the concept is that there are generations, and cycles that follow these generations. And according to this book, you will have like 4 generations, or 4 or maybe a slightly more. And in these generations, you get some different characteristics of these 4 generations. And this happens every 80 years or so in American history. So, for example, it starts with the revolution, the American Revolution, and then the War of Independence, and then the Civil War, the American Civil War, and then the Second World War. And now we are again in a transition period, right? And these generations that live in these 80 years, they forget. So as the first generation, for example, in the Second World War, went through a very difficult time. They sacrificed themselves, they defended the country, they did whatever. And then you get the next generation, and where they kind of built America into this great industrial power, which partly because they won the Second World War, and that helped. And then there's the generation, the generation that followed basically worried about itself, and they just kind of were selfish. And now we're coming to another generational cycle, and this is going to be like the Second World War. So there will be a big transition in American society, and that's what Shiv, Ravi, Jitain, everybody's Surinder, this is going to happen all over the world. We are going through a transitional process. So a lot of the agencies that are in the government, they're going to have to change a lot, because they're not serving the purpose well, what they were supposed to do. And so a lot is going to change over the next 10 years, 10, 15 years. So my dog is barking here.
Let's have the ending comment with Divya.
Thank you. So
thank you.
I picked up on a lot of conversation that had to be said. The movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory came to mind as we talked about financial concern and who's winning and who's not, and is that what's happening in America? You know, is Charlie winning? He's not. I think maybe like Veronica, the bad egg, she's winning. And that kind of, I mean, I guess it's a very simplistic way of, I don't know if everyone here has seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or like just knows the concept, but it's unfortunate. And that's the way things have been going for a while. You know, the person with the money, are they the one that's following the values in this book? No, they're not. And the more you try to go against the system, like a medical system or any system, really, it's not necessarily just limited to medical. I think that's just like one example of what's happening. And it's actually a mild example when you see different types of industries and how they're making their money. At least there's a compassionate side of things into the medical system that people expect. But the more you try to, the more privilege that you have, the more demanding your director is, and you can't change who that director is. And if you go against them, you lose your privilege. So what are we to do? And then you see the ethical people, and they're working for Doctors Without Borders or things like that, where they have to leave the system in order to do what they want to, you know, just move people forward and not get into a system where people are trying to maneuver how they manage their own practice. And when it comes to finances, like, can we, if you're financially stable, then maybe it's easier to do better for others. If you're coming from a place where you're not financially stable, then you understand more the people who you're taking care of. And then do you have that power to help them? No, because you don't have the money to help them, and you can only move forward with either having the money yourself or having someone who supports you with the money. And where they distribute the money is their decision. And they've kind of created a system where if they're abusive enough to create an abusive system, then they've also designed it so that you can't overcome that system. So what can we do except find the people who believe in the same values that we do, and, you know, form, people have protests, people have groups trying to get around these things. But that's kind of the world that we're living in right now. It's different than the Mahabharata, but at least there's more awareness and more groups being formed where we can, you know, find the people who believe what we believe in. And when it comes to self-control, and we can only control ourselves, when does that lead to kind of a sadness that, you know, we realize that we can't control what's happening around us, and we're just, you know, having our self-control over our own actions, but we also don't want to do the wrong thing. So are you getting that promotion? Are you making that money? Probably not. If you're in a position where you're doing the right thing, and you're like, but society sees it as, if you make money, you're a better person, and they celebrate the promotion. So I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of trying to like who we celebrate and why we're celebrating them, and how we think about money and people and what they do and the actions they take. But all we could really do is the couple that was there, I think they'd stepped out, but we can just in parallel do what's best for society, and, you know, control our own actions to try to not hurt ourselves in the process of trying to hurt others. And sometimes inaction is the best way to go about that, even though that's against what the book is saying. Sometimes it takes a lot of action to have inaction. It takes more action in ourselves to not do the wrong thing, or, you know, not do what somebody is telling us to do. And we do that at our own penalty. And I don't know, I don't have a solution. Otherwise I'd be, you know, rich and save the world, but somebody knows.
I
let
think
me know.
I think the time is over, and that's why Jiten and Gita and some other people left. We'll conclude here if that's okay with everybody. Yes,
Yes.
and we'll meet you next time. And when is that going to be?
That will be the last Sunday of February. whenever
Yes,
that is.
last Sunday of February, 11:30 a.m.
So that's February 26th.
Okay. Okay, we'll see. At least those people are here, and whoever could not make it today, hopefully they'll come.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
All right.
coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
See you all soon.